Light zone is for immediate...
Wait a minute. Have you heard?
This is a show to keep you on the edge of your seat.
Citizens of America,
Welcome to the Radiocast.
Hello and welcome to the Old Time Radio Show podcast. This week, I am your host, Jack Ryan. I'm joined this week alongside Joe Taft.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Abbie Kitchenham.
Hi.
And Jack Kelleher.
Hello.
Thanks. Nice to see you guys. This week, we're taking a look at the movie 1964's The Last Man on Earth by Sidney Salko. It was a dramatization of the 1954 movie I Am Legend. There's been a couple renditions of it after. So, initial thoughts. What did we think of the movie?
Oh man, I'll get it started first. What's actually funny is because I actually just watched I Am Legend recently. Was it the 2007 version with Will Smith? So it's kind of funny getting that experience and then only a couple weeks later watching this one. Overall, I thought it was pretty cool for the time. It was honestly pretty exciting movie, but at the same time, I think there were some things that we can get into that may not have aged as well as maybe they expected it to.
Totally. I agree. I actually watched I Am Legend like 2 days before I watched this. Because I wanted to get the story in my head, you know?
Cool.
I wanted to watch, the other one is what, The Omega Man?
Yeah, it's called The Omega Man.
I have not seen it.
Has anyone here seen it? Have you seen it, Jack?
No. I have, but I looked into it before this movie, and I'll definitely talk about that movie later.
Cool.
I have not seen I Am Legend, that movie. I haven't seen that. But I think the movie, like, the plot was, like, really cool, but, like, a lot of the, like the lips did not match any of what they were saying, which was, like, so aggravating.
Yeah, the issue with that is the movie was filmed in Rome mostly because, well, it was filmed in Italy mostly because the producer wanted to save money, and Vincent Price, the main actor, he's the only actor who's actually speaking English. Every other actor in this movie their lines were dubbed over.
That makes a lot of sense.
I noticed that like halfway through, and that's something I wish I knew going into it. Because like you're halfway through a movie, and so for the first half of the movie, it's just basically Vincent Price talking, so you don't even notice it because he's speaking English.
Yeah.
And then once the lady comes in, I think her name's Ruth. I was like, why don't her lips match her words?
The wife?
And I had to like look it up. Yeah.
I was very, very, very confused because I thought it was something to do with my phone, and it like after a while you could tell that it wasn't like a glitch or anything. It was just so like different than what they were actually saying. Like there were so many words that were like like they used their mouths and it was like short, and then the actual word that they were saying was like the longest word ever, and I was like
Yeah, I thought that my audio was literally off. I thought my audio sync was off. But as soon as Vincent Price would start talking again, I was like, oh, we're good to go. Nah, everything's fine. So 100%. And when the flashback started happening was when I was first like, whoa, like why are these people's mouths so? It's like they're lip syncing literally. So it was pretty funny.
Yeah, I chose it. I just love the story. I like the idea of it. You know, I'd seen I Am Legend when I was a child. You know, when I was a kid, when it first came out, and I was like, oh, this is a great movie. This is awesome. So then we're looking up non-copyright movies to watch. Right. I was like, oh, this is a great story. I know this. Upon going back to watch I Am Legend, not a great movie. I was not a fan.
Okay, fair enough.
So, like, I Am Legend isn't a good movie?
No, I remembered it a lot fonder than I remember seeing it.
Oh well, the novel that was written 10 years before this movie came out was called I Am Legend, and it was written by Richard Matheson, and Richard Matheson actually had a writing credit on The Last Man on Earth, but he went by a surname, Logan Swanson, because he wasn't satisfied with the film's final product. And he said that in the end, he said that movie was the most faithful adaptation of his novel, but he also called it inept.
Yeah. His surname, the name he went with was Logan Swanson, which a little trivia behind that. He chose that name because Logan was his wife's maiden name. Swanson was his mother's maiden name, so that's how he came up with Logan Swanson.
Wow.
Yeah,
hiding behind his family.
Yeah, like as you said, The Last Man on Earth, is considered by many to be the most faithful adaptation of the original I Am Legend, even though it would take 3 adaptations for them to actually call it I Am Legend.
That's right. That's true.
Because I read like in the Omega Man, they are like, because in The Last Man on Earth, the creatures are called vampires, which we can kind of get into later, but they're called vampires, which they're also called that in the book. In Omega Man, that movie removes all connections to vampires. The creatures in that are not vampires. They're instead albino mutants who wear these kind of Star Wars Sith black cloaks and sunglasses, and they all look pretty ridiculous. and if you've seen I Am Legend, they're not really vampires. They're more of fast-moving CG zombies.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking when I was watching it last night. I was like, they have like the garlic, the mirror thing, like that like matched like the vampires, but the way that they talked and like moved was like zombies.
It was giving zombie.
Yeah, it was
100%.
It was slow. Like you could like look at them and just like see they're dead. Like they have no stare in their eyes. It was actually pretty, for like a horror film in 1964. Like it's a pretty good trope, to have that
I got a
type
little scared at a
of
point.
monster. But
I thought, not to cut you off, I thought there was the moment to cut into the movie a little bit when his wife reanimates and comes back.
Exactly
that was probably the
thinking
moment
about.
where I was. I mean, her performance was like,
that was
this
good.
is actually scary.
that's what I said.
I want this scene to end.
In her face, Yeah.
The part that scared me was, I think it was like that scene, but like the before when it was like her whispering the name. I was like, it was like 12 a.m. in the morning, and I was like, this is terrifying.
Yeah, that was definitely, I think, the most effective scene in the movie. It was just hearing the wife's voice outside the door, and then you open it, and she's just there as a zombie.
Yeah, that was pretty awesome.
And it almost with like no makeup or like design either. It's basically all acting with what they did. And it was kind of odd seeing them because you can see them and they're the monsters and they're the vampires, but then it'll just cut to a shot of like someone banging on his door and be like, Robert, and I'm like, he just looks like a normal guy who wants to get in, Like, they're speaking English.
Actually, fun fact, you mentioned this before we started filming, but there is like a version of the movie where it's in color, and out of curiosity, I looked at that. You can find it on YouTube, and there is actually makeup on the vampires.
Okay.
They have like this sort of like gray, a bluish makeup,
that
which
makes sense.
in the black and white version you can't tell, but they do have it on, and it kind of struck me that they look exactly like how the zombies in George Romero's Dawn of the Dead look, because they have like the exact same kind of gray, bluish makeup.
Yeah, they look kind of like gaunt, and they're just totally devoid of like any extra color or like any of that. 100%, and that is a good reference to Dawn of the Dead. I like that.
Totally. And this was made before zombies, you know what I mean?
Oh,
there
it was
no zombies before. Yeah.
Really?
So George Romero actually took a lot of inspiration from this movie to make like his zombies, he said, he really credits this film, which his Night of the Living Dead really made zombies
really did.
mainstream pop culture.
Sure.
Yeah, Night of the Living Dead came out 4 years after this in 1968, and actually here's a bit of history. The idea of zombies actually comes from the Caribbean, of like voodoo and like voodooism.
Okay.
And in that culture, zombies were just corpses that were brainwashed into basically reanimating, and they would be these brainwashed undead servants. They were not flesh eaters, but that was just kind of at the time, like that's what the idea of zombies were. And it wasn't until Night of the Living Dead where they became the like flesh-eating undead creatures that can only be killed by destroying the brain. And then that's how and then that's kind of the only zombie we see nowadays. But even though I do love Night of the Living Dead, the Last Man on Earth kind of, I think, like probably doesn't get the credit it deserves with with its influence on the zombie genre, because if you look at the scenes of the slow-moving creatures trying to break into the house, it's hard not to see the similarities with Night of the Living Dead, which is essentially the same plot of these undead, slow-moving creatures trying to break into this house to get to the survivors.
Right, it's pretty crazy, and because like I had no clue even of this movie before researching, but never mind, that it kind of influenced what zombies are in that kind of way. But they did kind of move back and forth with this slow moving thing. I don't know if you guys remember at the end of the movie, they're chasing him down and he goes to hide in the church. But they're kind of like chasing him pretty fast, they kind of went from being the slow moving.
Where did this come from?
Those are the people they had like a vaccine.
Yeah, are those
so they were like
okay.
They were like carried kind of.
Yeah, like those people.
The people who pulled up on the trucks.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right. Those were infected humans, right?
They were infected, but they had like some sort
With
of
the
like the syringe thing. Like cured them for like a certain amount of time.
Yeah, they were basically curing themselves with a vaccine / like blood thing. But that was again, it was almost. I mean, the point is for him to not be aware of it until kind of the last second, and that's always one of the. I think that's more not like an issue I have with. I think it's just from the book. I think that the idea of that for me is just like he's so in his ways. Like, man, there is no one else. I am it. This stinks. But then by 2/3 of the way through the movie, somebody just kind of pops up and completely changes his mind frame. And the same thing happens in I Am Legend. But what I wanted to mention about I Am Legend, because you were talking about your thoughts on the movie and stuff, is that with I Am Legend, I watched that movie. I'm watching the first sequence with Will Smith and the dog going through Times Square, and I'm like, you know what? I want to be Will Smith right now. Like, I want the world. Like, if the world was over, and I was just rolling through with this rifle
hunting
and this dog, and like I'm just whipping like 200 miles an hour down that would be kind of cool.
Yeah, that would be cool.
Vincent Price gets through the first day of this, and I genuinely was like, this I would end it. This has got to be the worst experience like ever. Dude. He is like downtrodden. He is defeated by what he has to do. My favorite thing, not to go off too far, but when he's actually doing the deed and doing some staking, I love Vincent Price's like physicality. I'll call it physicality. He kind of is just like when he stakes the lady, he's like. Not to mention, there's a few moments of that where someone closes the door and it's very like he's like shuts it very like low key at the end. There's lots of maybe they didn't want to break the set, right? This is very
only
cheap.
had so much money.
I agree with the whole what he went through. I was asking myself that question the entire time, like why he wanted to like live that life. Like I don't understand. Like he's the last person. I also don't understand where he like. When he went to the grocery store and like got all those things, I don't know how long he's been in his house hiding, but like when did those things? Yeah, so it was 3 years. Okay, that's what I thought. 3 years. How is any of that stuff still like good? Like the garlic was fresh. How is that fresh? That makes no sense.
Right. Oh, it was in the freezer.
Garlic in the
no,
freezer.
it wasn't. It was in the basket.
Yeah, no. The garlic when he went to the grocery store was in with like there was hanging meat. There was maybe I saw the extended edition.
Oh yeah, that
maybe
was
I saw the
hanging meat cut.
maybe I saw the Salco cut.
Yeah, that was a freezer, but like still 3 years. That's crazy.
No, yeah, it is wild. And how he goes, I can only take as much as I need. Takes a whole basket. There's only 2 left.
I didn't understand that sentence because why would he?
No, I'm with you.
Why
I'm
would
with
he?
you.
He complains about how much he has to like when he has to leave. He's like, just another trip I have to go on.
Yeah.
And then like, why is he like, I'll only take how much I need?
do?
Like literally, just take the garlic. Just take it all.
Before he goes into the fridge, like you see that there's a generator outside that's powering it, and like he stops to check on it before going into the fridge.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then,
that's right. Very quick. That
and
happens.
you can see there's a lot of boxes inside, so maybe there's more garlic in there. Maybe they just didn't have enough budget to buy so much garlic, because after a while that's going to start smelling on the set. So
yeah, you don't want that.
So they probably only wanted to get enough for that scene, and he says he only needs enough, probably just to get through the next.
Yeah, until he has to go back.
Few weeks till he has to come back for it. And
100%.
Yeah, that is something I did think the beginning of the movie was very effective with just kind of showing his day-to-day
Yeah.
his day-to-day life and just like the little tasks he has to do every morning. Like the movie starts and we see him get up, he goes to the radio, does a brief check-in, then he goes around the house checking all the mirrors and the garlic, seeing what's fresh, what needs to be replaced. Then he goes out, he collects the bodies, and then just basically goes about his day.
Absolutely.
One thing I don't get, and this got me like really confused. All the bodies that are on the ground, right? Like those are like the vampires, right?
Yeah.
But how are they dying? Like how did they just like?
Maybe.
Because I thought that.
Well,
I know that they like dropped dead after a while, but then they come back to life after they like died, so they wouldn't.
I think he had a quick line that sort of explained it, where he said that the creatures feed upon. He had a brief line, I believe, where he said that the creatures feed upon the weakest of them.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay, so they would like. Okay.
Yeah, like I
That makes
think
more
just
sense.
after a while, the creatures just trying to break into the house and not succeeding. It kind of implies that they would just get frustrated and turn on
Yeah.
their weakest ones. And I think he wanted to get rid of the bodies so that there wouldn't be any food sources for the remaining creatures.
Yeah.
And sorry, and
that's okay.
earlier you mentioned like Vincent Price's physicality. When he was picking up the bodies and putting them in the trunk, Vincent Price asked the director to have it. At first, it was going to be mannequins, but he wanted it to actually be people, actors that he would have to physically lift up because he wanted, because he wanted it. He wanted it to look like his character was struggling to do it.
I noticed that, and I couldn't tell if they were dummies or not.
Yeah, like,
I
It
was-
looked like he was
Yeah.
struggling
It
to
looks
like
like-
lift them. Yeah.
It looks
Strong
like he was
fella.
struggling, yeah, but like at the same time, he did it really easily. At the same time, like he definitely was strong.
Yeah. That was an interesting scene. That one stood out for me. As
Yeah,
soon as
it did, yeah.
those limp bodies just get
And the
tossed around by
trunk
Vincent
open.
Price. Yeah, I have to make mention of that. I was gonna make mention to. I feel like I'm backtracking, but I wanted to talk about the pit because you asked questions about why those people are sitting there.
Yeah.
In the street, because if you remember when we go into the flashback and the disease starts occurring and people start to die, they're throwing people in the pit
Yeah, I remember
because
that.
supposedly that will stop them from becoming undead. I think that ended up being true
Yeah.
because obviously then it's when the mother wife is buried, that's when she returns.
Right.
But my thought is that if it had to have gotten out of hand and they just start, they've lost, like, humanity's lost, the undead have won. Now the undead will just take people out in the street. I mean, because there's no pit, like there's no people to like regulate the pit anymore.
Right.
Is basically what I got from it.
I just
They don't
Oh,
explain
sorry.
it like, exposition like this is what happened.
my confusion was that like he was the last man, so I was like, who? Like I was
Right.
like, those couldn't
Where are
be
these
humans.
coming
Yeah.
from?
I was like, where are these people
Yeah.
coming
It's
from?
like
that are-
it's inherently lying to you. 100%.
Yeah, I was like, what? Like
Mhm.
it made no sense.
Mhm.
Speaking of which, in this, do they ever get into detail on where the virus came from? Because I know it's a huge part of I Am Legend, but in my research, I couldn't find anything on this or have it say.
I think the novel also leaves it pretty vague on
Really?
where the
Okay.
a disease comes from, and you kind of see that in a lot of these kind of stories. Like in The Walking Dead, they never say where the zombie plague came from.
Right.
The Last of Us show sort of implies where it comes from, but in most zombie vampire plague stories, they usually keep it very vague on where exactly the outbreak comes from.
Because there is a scene where he's describing his immunity. And
Yeah,
he's
the
like, I
bat.
got bit
The
by
bat.
a bat one time. and
Yeah.
It's definitely that, which was also a
How
very
did that
weird
end
scene
up
to
being
me.
true?
Right.
How did that like?
I read that's that explanation is also from the book, but
Wow.
that's just the main character. Just like that's the only reason he can think of for
That's
why he
what I
might
was
be
thinking.
immune.
Why does his blood cure? Oh, is it? Maybe it's not because he was bit by a bat. Maybe it's just because he's human. But like, that would make sense.
Yeah.
But like,
No, he said that the bat was
give him immunity.
he said it was like infected, or it was like
Carried
it was
the
like
vampiric germ.
Yeah.
yeah, what's up with that? How did he know? He's a doctor. Yeah, he knows
But
everything. He
that's
knows all.
what I was wondering. How does he know that
Not a good
he's
one.
immune because that bat bit him
Right.
those 5 years ago? Like,
Yeah. He's like, well, that bat did bite me, and so That's gotta be
I didn't
it.
get the flu
that's
this
gotta
year.
be it, yeah.
I got bit by a raccoon back in 17.
What about the other people that might have got bit by a bat?
Have you guys never heard of the story Spider-Man? Like, come on, seriously. Like,
Yeah, seriously.
Yeah.
Do your research, guys.
And-
Come on.
seriously. Like, it happens out in the real world.
I also wanted to mention when he's throwing those bodies around in the kind of still the opening of the movie, there was a continuity error that I could not help but
I think I know
point
what you're
out,
talking
man. He walks out his front door. He's got a bag of steaks and a hammer. And he walks out and he sees these two bodies sitting there and he's like, ah. And he throws the bag and the hammer on the ground and he picks up the bodies and he puts them in the trunk and he gets in the car and he leaves.
Yeah.
And the bag is nowhere to be found. And then about 20 minutes later, when he goes on his first killing spree, there's the bag, the's the hammer. And it's like,
Yeah.
They did
I
that
don't
a
know.
few
Right.
times.
I-
There
I
was some
noticed that
yeah.
a few times with
Yeah.
like him like either like going somewhere and then like not being in that place or like getting in the car with something and not even having that thing.
Yeah.
I've noticed
Yeah,
that
yeah,
multiple
yeah.
times.
Absolutely.
Yeah, part of me likes to think that he made it about 2 blocks down the road, realized he left the bag, went back to get it. Like, maybe that just happened off screen. He was like,
That'd be amazing.
damn it.
Yeah, they didn't
Went
have
back
that
to
on
get
the
it.
plot.
Or, yeah, that scene probably happened because Vincent Price probably actually forgot the bag, and that was the
Yeah.
only take they did because
They couldn't do another.
because of budget reasons.
No, I totally feel that. The only other continuity thing I was finding funny was the trunk.
Yeah.
He kept leaving the trunk open, and I thought this
Yeah.
was on purpose. Like
I
he was
think it
leaving.
was.
He was leaving the. I mean, he left the trunk open, drove on the highway for
tell.
20 minutes, got to the pit,
Okay.
and that trunk was still open.
Here's my thing.
That was amazing.
Here's my
Go ahead.
thing. I think they did it on purpose because, or they left it open
there
once
were
and they're like,
continuity
okay, well,
things
you know,
where
We
But,
have
like,
to now.
they're like, we have to, but
Yeah.
like, no one else is on the earth. Like, why does it matter? You know, like, there was nothing in his trunk. Like, and he had
I
like
hear
the bodies like hanging out so far that like he couldn't close it when the bodies were in
True.
the car.
True.
So then he was probably like, I don't want to close it. So he was just like, I'm just gonna drive. You know, because like
100%.
Yeah,
he
and
already
also,
has no motivation. To,
and
like,
also
live.
keeping the trunk open makes it easier to put more bodies in instead
that.
of having to open and close it every time.
It did annoy
True.
me though. It was really annoying.
Can we talk about the fact that he finds this dog, and the dog is
True.
absolutely crucial in I Am Legend with Will Smith. Like it is. I mean, not that it's absolutely crucial, but the whole first half of the movie, this dog is his homie.
After
In Last Man on Earth, he finds that dog, and before 5 minutes have gone by, that dog is in the dirt.
Yeah.
the dog
buried.
is just a little
Okay,
blink in his leg.
Because
He-
that
Yeah.
part confused the heck out of me. Did he die? Did the dog die?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
dog
yeah.
was
There was like
infected.
blood. Yeah. At first, I thought it was dirt, but it was blood, and the dog was infected, and he put a stake in it.
Is
He
that
buried
what-
it in the ground?
Is that what happened? That's what I thought happened.
Absolutely.
But
Yeah,
I,
like he puts
I
like a
couldn't
little
tell.
a dog-sized bag, but
Yeah.
the steak's still inside it in the ground.
tell. Okay, because I
Yeah.
saw that and I
Yeah.
thought that he, like, I don't know, put like his like science equipment in the bag for some reason, like because.
Yeah.
Because he was like, I'm never gonna find a cure, and he was like
I quit
angry. He
this
was like, I
job.
quit, and then all of a sudden he was like burying like
Jesus.
something. So I was like, oh, he's done with science, you know. But that's apparently not what
You may
happened.
have been. You may have been misdirected. Yes.
A little bit,
Yeah.
just a little bit.
I thought that was so funny, and just how, and then I mean, he goes from
The poor guy.
there, yeah, he goes from the dog to then seeing the woman, just kind of walking right towards him.
I was not getting the point with her for a while.
Yeah, I mean,
What do you
I,
mean?
I felt this. I felt the same way. Not to cut you off. I felt the same way when I watched I Am
Yeah.
Legend, and spoilers, other people show up, and you're like, what do you mean he's not the only person? But I think that's
Yeah.
the whole point of the
Right.
story. It's
Yeah.
that's his emotion. You feel
Yeah.
the same thing that he felt. So,
But like, how was I supposed to know that she was a vampire? Like,
well,
she kept pulling something out of her like pant or dress.
yeah,
But
that
I
was the
literally-
drug that
Was
keep-
that?
Yeah, that
Because
was the drug that
I
keeps
couldn't
her
see it.
somewhat normal.
yeah.
Because she'd pull it out for like a literal second. I'm like, oh,
Mhm.
what is it? And then it would skip to the next frame. I'm like,
Yeah.
Also, every time she was on screen, I was just focused on the fact that her words were not matching her lips.
oh yeah, that too. And her
Yeah.
hair was like literally giant.
Yeah, well, Vincent Price's character finds out that she's vampire because he puts garlic in her face and she reacts
How did
violently.
he?
One
So
dog.
how did he come to that conclusion?
Right,
Like,
it's
how
just a
did he?
normal
How is he
thing.
like?
Well-
how is he like?
Trial and error.
Yeah.
in
As
the
a
past.
vampire? No, but like
He's got
all of
trust
a sudden they were
issues.
having dinner. They were just having dinner, okay?
Well,
And he gets up, he grabs the garlic and starts shoving it in her face. Like, Where did the conclusion that like she's a vampire come from?
I think he just wanted to
paranoid.
test. He wanted to test it out, and then she says like, "No, I have a weak stomach. I'm just sick, and that smells bad." And then he sort of believes her, but you can see he's still suspicious. Yeah. Then later, when she sneaks into a room to inject herself with it, he breaks in and is like, "What is this?" And she's like, and then she admits that she's infected, but is using this drug to keep herself from turning into one of like the zombie people outside.
Okay, question. So after that point, what is the problem? Because can't they just be humans together now?
The problem
he's still upset with her, even though she's not cured, but she's taken drugs to make her human, and she's like seems to be acting like a normal person. So why is he still upset?
I think the issue from his point of view is that he has been killing these infected for so many years, and they've been trying to break in his house and kill him. That he just doesn't. Anyone who's infected, he's quick to distrust, and
his wife,
and the issue is that him realizing, wait, there are infected people who are not mindless monsters, and I've been killing these people.
Right.
He can't live with it. He can't come to grips with it. So he's literally, it's like he's created this conflict of interest.
But then he injects her with his blood.
Yeah, I thought that was wild too. Without consent,
she just wakes up. Weren't consent. She was trying to leave for quite some time.
100%.
Why was he so aggressive with her?
Right?
Oh yeah, when she's he's throwing her around.
Yeah, is that normal? I don't think that's normal.
I mean,
he was really
yeah,
shaking her.
The crew was probably like, "All right, Vinny, you can take it easy there, pal. You're gonna hurt her." I mean, but probably not, because he was a big star. Actress. They're like, "Let him do whatever he wants." If he throws her across the room, then it's probably a great take.
Oh my!
Nah, I 100%.
It was just the movie was just really good. I just there were certain parts where I was like, where does this logic come from?
Yeah, I think it has to do with execution.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the 1960s, and it's the first of its kind. I mean,
yeah,
like we said, this movie, the Last Man on Earth, walked so that Night of the Living Dead could run, and so George Romero could have his career. So it's obviously you have to look at it from an inspirational angle. It did inspire some films, but at the same time, it has its issues. The writer of the book wouldn't have used a fake name if he thought it was a masterpiece.
Right.
And he, I don't know if you heard this, but he said that he would have preferred. He said he would have preferred if Harrison Ford was the lead and that George Miller was the director. And I was like, yeah, so would just about anybody who writes a screenplay in the 1960s and 70s.
How old is Harrison Ford?
Well, that's the other thing. I have to say that too. Yeah, because he said that after the fact.
Yeah,
he said it after the fact.
Oh,
Harrison Ford was like a child.
I was gonna say, I think
yeah.
You're thinking of the wrong guy here.
No, yeah.
Harrison Ford is not that old.
He spoke about it after the fact, because he didn't call the movie, he didn't say the movie was inept but also the best adaptation right after, because other adaptations had to release before he made those comments.
Right.
Harrison Ford would have been good though.
Yeah, I mean, the man can do anything.
Yeah,
kind of going into that, the author felt that Vincent Price was miscast in the lead role, and I read into that because in the book, and I keep mentioning the book, but I did look into the book to see what the changes were. In the book, the main character is not a scientist. He's in his mid-30s, and he's sort of he's like a factory worker, everyday man.
Okay.
So not
just like a plant.
So not like a middle-aged, a sophisticated scientist like Vincent Price was.
That's right.
And that is a change the movie made that every other remake of or every other adaptation of I Am Legend would also make, which would be the main character becoming a scientist.
Interesting.
In Omega Man, he's a scientist, and in I Am Legend, Will Smith is also a scientist. So that's a change that the Last Man on Earth made that every other remake would also copy. And speaking of changes in the book, another change was his whole blood. His blood being the cure.
Okay.
That is something that is not in the book.
That's a big change.
It's something that I read that the main character thinks about his blood might be a cure, but he never gets around to actually testing it. Okay. In this movie, he tested on Ruth, the woman, and it turns out, yes, he can completely cure people with his blood. And that is a change that would also be, that is a plot point that would also be in Omega Man and was also in I Am Legend. He discovers his blood is the cure. So
Okay, so it's funny how, like, you know, the other movie adaptations were like, you know what, there were things in this that worked. Like, let's use that, because maybe cinematically they thought it just translated better than some of the things that were on the page. I mean, that happens all the time.
Going back to the dog, because I still want to talk about this dog. So if you
Please.
know, Jack, was the dog in the book?
yes,
Do you know?
I read because I found like a whole website page describing the differences between the movie and the book. The dog is in the book and pretty much has the exact same role. It shows up, he tries to catch it, and when the dog finally decides to show up and he's so excited to have a companion, he realizes that the dog is infected and he has to put it down.
Right.
So
How did the dog get infected?
Well, they did say, again, you guys were talking about how the virus, how the sickness like spread, or that it is left up to interpretation, but they did say it's through the air. That it's an airborne illness. And I mean, they don't really say anything about animals. They just kind of imply that like it also spreads to them as well.
yeah, because in I Am Legend we also see that there's dogs that are turned to these zombie creatures as well.
Yes,
So it also
yes.
affects animals, because when Vincent Price first sees the dog, he's like, wait, it's alive? Like, clearly he's surprised to see a dog walking around. So that kind of implies that the illness affected animals as well.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, because if he has that reaction, you'd think he has that prior experience.
I was just wondering if it's in the book, because when
Yeah.
I was watching it, the whole time after he kills the dog, obviously, in my head I was just like, what was the point of that? You just had a nice, like a 10-minute sequence where you found a dog and killed him in no time.
I think it's supposed to show like how much he wants to have companionship.
100%.
Totally.
I mean, like, yeah, I do agree. Like, it was very short-lived. Like, why? For what
Yeah.
reason?
In my head, I was like, it's probably
I
just
thought it worked,
filler.
personally,
we have an
but that,
86-minute movie.
Yeah.
Like, could it have expanded maybe 10 more minutes? Like, maybe, but I think that it honestly, like, I was the one that brought up that it was 5 minutes later the dog's in the ground. But I think that it also is relatively impactful in the same way. Not to say that you're wrong, you're not.
No,
Like,
I'm
it's
just
just opinion.
questioning.
Like, I just feel like, in a way, the short-lived nature of the dog goes into and adds to and it heightens Vincent Price's characters. Robert Morgan, not Robert Neville. Also, I want to mention that Robert Morgan's just overall downtroddenness, his sadness, his loneliness, and like just how much he misses having someone around. And then when Ruth does show up, how you can see how badly he wants to help her, and we kind of get that from the scene before.
Yeah, because throughout the film we've seen him like just trying to find basically purpose, and his new purpose is trying to eliminate all these creatures. And then basically during the night, during his downtime, we see him listening, just kind of sitting in his living room listening to classical music. We see him viewing old home videos and a B-roll of a circus show for some reason.
That's right.
And during that, he starts laughing, and then it turned like halfway through, he just starts sobbing. Like,
Oh my god, that was okay. That was phenomenal, honestly. I really appreciated that scene.
yeah, like so we clearly see he is struggling to find like just reasons to keep going. He is like trying to find like things to distract him.
Yes.
So when this dog shows up, he's very excited. He says, "We're gonna have." I think he has the line, "We're gonna have so many happy memories together." Yeah. And then like almost immediately, that dream is just taken away from
Stomped
him.
on. Absolutely stomped on.
And then like when that happens, he doesn't cry. His only reaction is he just bursts out laughing and just
Again.
like.
was scary.
Like his reaction is
Yeah,
just sort of like, "Of course this happens to me. Like, of course I can't have anything nice."
We can't have nice things, right?
Yeah.
No, absolutely not. Not in this movie.
Definitely not in this movie.
For a guy living in the apocalypse, though, dress is great.
Oh man,
Dress
that man's
I
got some
know.
serious
He
Puts on a
steez.
suit every morning to go
I would look
fight
like Ruth.
zombies and vampires.
When you're the
Props
last
to him.
man on
Props
Earth,
to
you
him.
can't be poorly dressed.
That's so valid. I think
Sorry.
that Vincent Price's character was like, he sometimes got to me. He was kind of like
Yeah.
creepy in a way at times too. Like
Yeah.
with the
We're talking about. Sorry, I don't mean to do that. I cut you off, but
No, you're good.
because he is. I mean, we're talking about like a master actor. You're talking about an actor who is like
Yeah.
totally outclassing everyone else on the production.
Yeah.
That it's like when he has that scene when he's so I wanted to comment on he's hysterically laughing and turns to crying. It's like you're like, man, like
Talent.
I don't know if anyone else could have done this like Vincent Price could have. You know what I mean? And I
Harrison
think that
Ford
is
could.
what makes it strong and partially why you're like, huh, kind of happy. Well, I'm like, it's a good movie. Really thankful that he's in it
Yeah.
because if it wasn't,
Yeah.
I probably would have turned it off. No, I'm just kidding.
And you mentioned that there was something creepy about him, and that is probably just a little inherent because before this, I'm pretty sure every movie I'd seen Vincent Price in before this, he was the villain.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he's mostly known for his being in horror movies, and he is primarily the villain.
Like,
in them.
like in a horror movie. So
yeah,
like,
he's
dark.
he's played a mad scientist quite a few times. So seeing him
I
play
can see him playing a mad
yeah,
scientist.
so seeing him in the
You
hero
can see it
role
pretty
for
easily.
once was pretty unique, and it also he does play the role I think like with a lot of gentleness, but there
Yeah.
also is an underlining sinisterness to him,
Yeah.
which I think kind of works because we're led to believe he is the last man on Earth and he's only killing these mindless creatures. But then in the last third, he discovers there's this whole
Other civilizations.
third group, this third civilization of people who are infected, but have been able to retain most of their humanity, and that he has actually been killing these people, and in his mind, I mean, in their minds, he is the monster, not them, because he has just been killing them and stalking them. So it it worked for me that there was sort of an underlining sinisterness to Vincent Price's performance, because
Yeah.
at first we think he's the good guy, but then we discover maybe, at least to this third group,
Yeah.
he is not the good guy.
No.
I think that whole concept though was kind of cool. I was thinking about it a lot that like, you know, like for so long, even before like he was by himself, like no one really liked obviously like the vampires because they were like diseased, so on and so forth. And then at the end, it's just like crazy because he is the last person and he's the last man. And since there's a whole different civilization of all people who are diseased, it's like it's so crazy that how quickly he can switch to being the like one who's different than everyone. I think it's crazy.
Yeah. How
And that-
just perspective changes on
Yeah.
who's actually in the right.
Yeah, and that's actually the novel's name, I Am Legend,
Right.
because Ruth has a line where she said, when she first explains to Morgan about her
She
people,
tells all.
her people, she says, quote, "You're a legend to them."
Yep.
Like
Yep.
and when she says that he is like this monster who stalks them during the day in their view, that's where the title I Am Legend comes from.
Yeah. Yeah.
At the end of the novel, and this adaptation is him realizing that he's in fact not, that in the minds of the people who he thought, that he finds out that the supposedly mindless creatures he's been killing are not what he thought they were, and that in his mind he is now the monster.
Right.
He is the legend, which, and The Last Man on Earth is the only adaptation that kind of fully shows that, because I mentioned in Omega Man, they're not vampires, they're these weird albino mutants. And in the only adaptation that's called I Am Legend, the Will Smith version,
They reshot the ending.
yeah, depending on which ending you got, it either sort of touches upon that theme or just completely ignores
Or
it.
completely blows it up with a hand grenade. No, yeah, 100%, dude. And I had to mention on that ending because, like you said, I mean, it felt pretty close. Like he had almost come to that realization, but he sat there and called them freaks.
Yeah.
Like in the end, like it almost felt like he couldn't, like I said, come to grips with the horrors that they had made it out that he had made. So I think it's interesting because like the whole time, you know, like you said, we've already gone over all that. It just blew my, that whole finale. I have to talk about not necessarily if, you know, did they do it the right way in the story. That's all fine. The character motivation of Ruth to like,
Yeah.
she's the spy, right? We get that. She's been told to go spy on this guy. She fails. She doesn't fail, but she gets caught, and then she like kind of is siding with him.
Kind of, yeah.
Right. You can, when she's rubbing her face on the garlic, that was wild. That was a wild moment. I was like, what's going on here? But we get to the end. Her people show up. Vincent Price runs off. They get to the church, and she shows up. The deed is done. He calls them freaks. He does whatever. She like runs up and cradles him.
It's like Stockholm.
They're probably looking at her like,
yeah.
What are you doing? But then when she walks off, this is what threw me off, is like she walks off after Vincent Price is dead. In the last moment of the movie, she doesn't look that bummed that Vincent Price is dead. Walks off, and the baby's crying, and she says that everything's going to be okay, like to the baby. So I wanted to know, like, what do you guys think of that ending? How did you all interpret it?
I was thinking about that when I was watching it, because I was like there could be multiple situations of why she said that. She could just be saying it because he's already dead. Like, she has to move on. Like, she didn't know him long. Like, she's just gotta like move on from it and like start the civilization new with the people. Or like she literally did not give a crap about him the entire time and was just like she knew. Maybe they knew that his blood was like
they could have
like, and they wanted to like test it out.
Yeah,
something like that.
Something. I sort of have two interpretations of that ending of what it could mean. One was that it's just kind of her reassuring. It's sort of the ending of she didn't really care too much for him, and she comforts the baby by saying everything's going to be okay.
Because this monster is
because
dead.
The monster who's been hunting them is dead, and also we see them massacre all the more zombified, infected. So at the ending, there's no one left to hurt them. And the other ending is
they did beat beat the brakes off those zombies in the parking lot.
So how are they so mad at Vincent Price for doing the same thing?
Because he's killed members of their own group who were just sleeping.
But what if
what
the people they killed are members of someone else's group?
Now I think we're starting to understand this movie.
That shows everyone's a hypocrite.
Everyone,
absolutely. As I was saying, the second version is because remember a few scenes earlier, Vincent Price's character had actually just cured Ruth.
That's right.
So does that mean that her blood now could work as a cure?
That's what I was thinking.
And like, she's going to basically finish what he started, and
that he had to be sacrificed
and like
for
cure
it,
everyone
for the betterment of the society. Maybe I could be wrong.
Would only work, I feel like, if the concept was that human blood could save. I guess it is his blood that,
right?
But like still, like I think it's different when you transfer like blood. Like I don't think it like.
Yeah, because he injected his blood into her, so I don't know if that makes her blood now a potential cure.
Yeah,
I think they intentionally left that ending up for interpretation.
100%. Yeah, and I think it's stronger than what they tried to pull off with Will Smith's I Am Legend, because I know it's not Will Smith's movie, but obviously, just because what the two people that show up to him, spoilers, I'm sorry, they try to pitch to him that there is a society up in like Maine or whatever they said, and that they're cool, and like you can come with us, and like we're gonna rebuild this. Like she was being uber positive to Will Smith. They're like, you're a legend, we want you to join this. And he's like, nah, like, what do you mean everyone's dead? So I think that the way that it was done, like, that was very cut and dry. Like, set in stone, like, she's got a viewpoint, he's got a viewpoint, and they are not agreeing. Of course, the alternate ending that a sequel is now being made off of, he ends up deciding in the last moment that, yeah, okay, maybe he was wrong. This version, and of course we're still talking about I Am Legend, this version I feel like leaves more up to interpretation, lets the viewer decide more, and it's like a harder choice because like he's got the information that he is actually killing some of these people, but he does die still saying like, y'all are freaks, I'm the last man, and he dies on that. And so it's like,
how do we know that he was actually the last man? Why is he so confident in that? Like, he lives in, like, a town, probably, where, I live in a small town. I don't I don't go to like, Mexico.
Good
I mean, like
point.
someone could be living in Mexico.
Good
Like,
point.
Well,
100%.
how do we know?
he probably,
The radio,
He probably was
but-
just assuming that after 3 years of him calling out on the radio and never seeing another living person, after a while he probably just assumed he was the last person.
Maybe they just didn't have a radio.
Which also, after 3 years, and these people are obviously living kind of close to him. How hasn't he seen these people, Ruth's people?
Well,
That's what I'm.
because
I
as
don't know where they live.
Dumb.
because Ruth explained that I think she explained that like the zombie there's kind of two groups of infected: the Ruth's people who are a bit more normal than the more zombified infected. The Ruth's people, she said, still have issues in the sun, but they can move around more easily, and I think they're mostly nocturnal, so that's why in the day, like, you don't really see them moving around.
I have a question. I was thinking about this the entirety of the movie.
Uh-oh.
If you were in this situation, okay, and you had a basement, why wouldn't you just go to your basement? Like, because they kept like breaking the windows and stuff. Like, I saw them breaking the wood. Like, how did they not break through that?
It was just a couple pieces of like plywood.
Like,
put
literally,
up,
they
too.
could
It
have
wasn't
easily, like,
that
they broke
barricaded.
one.
This feels
yeah.
like nitpicking.
It is nitpicking.
Yeah, that is kind
Why
of.
didn't you go to the basement?
I'm just saying. I'm just
Robert.
Do you not have a
saying.
safe room?
I'm just saying, especially then, like, they had basements because,
Yeah, I know
like,
what you mean.
I don't
It was
think
like-
they
I
had
just-
basements.
yeah, because they were so scared they were gonna get like nuclear
And-
bombed. So they had like,
True.
yeah. So
Yeah, but not in Italy.
Yeah, true.
Okay, whatever.
Yeah, the film's meant to take place in Los Angeles. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
clearly not
I
Los
also-
Angeles.
Yeah, no. And when you're watching the movie, you can't really tell that it's like a big place. I think that I Am Legend does that better, where you get the vibe that he drives out to the radio in I Am Legend, and instead of it just being in his like
Right.
bedroom like it is in this movie, but that and him going out and doing that and making it feel like he has done that every day, like, kind of gives the more of the vibe that like nobody's answering,
Right.
not just that it's just in his living room. Not that it's, I mean, obviously he's still doing the same thing. He's still calling out to see if anyone's there, but like the act of driving like 30 minutes to go and do it just makes it seem like more of a hassle, I guess.
No, I know what you mean.
Oh.
Like,
Mhm.
totally.
Like, he probably didn't start off with that radio in his living room. He probably had to go find it, drag it back to his living room, and set up shop there.
True,
Yeah,
yeah,
he
that
was.
Well, he is strong, thankfully.
He's very good at finding stuff out in the like when he got
Yeah.
gas.
He has everything he needs.
I was like, how is he gonna get gas? And all of a sudden, he pulled up next to the car, and he
Thank
was like,
you.
"Do that." I was like, "What?"
Thank you for bringing that up, because that was another continuity thing. I guess they must have alluded to it, but he was like, I need gas. I'm going to run out of gas.
Like,
and then
that
he
was the
goes
gas,
to the
right?
pit, and then there's just like 10 gasoline things. So I guess maybe he must have filled up there, but then later he's like, I got to get home. Like, I have no gas.
Well, on the way to the pit, he stops by what
A
looks
car.
like a oil truck,
Yeah.
like an oil tanker, and fills up from that.
Oh, boy.
But they don't show him filling up. They
Remember
show
that.
him like getting onto the truck in like a boat too.
that
And I
part.
was like, but like
That was
I don't
weird.
know how.
Yes.
Like,
let's
how did
let's-
he do that?
let's signify that he's getting gas by having him crawl up onto this big truck and not actually pump gas.
Yeah, like is there like a pump that was like where he? Like,
Yeah.
it makes me
He might have been
Up to
siphoning. He could have been siphoning.
Yeah, I think he was
gas,
siphoning
yeah.
from it, which, yeah, like it was a giant oil tanker, like what they would carry gas in. So, and probably just for budget and also reasons they didn't want to show him doing that, and also
What if it wasn't gas?
watching a
It
guy
was diesel.
like
Yeah.
siphon gas is probably not the most exciting thing to watch. So
No.
I don't think they necessarily had to hold our hands for that.
No, for sure. I definitely thought there were moments though, like in the beginning. I have to talk about that opening. Not the opening with the wide shots and the zombies. That was great. I loved that. And I loved how with that opening, there were a lot of steady shots, wides of the city, but then there were some that were just a little shaky, a little bit of this, and you're like, huh, there's something going on. Then you start seeing the dead bodies. But after that, we peer into Vincent Price's window, and then he's sleeping. The alarm goes off. He wakes up. Thank you for the sound effect. And the thing goes off, and he's like, another day. And he gets up, and the music like blares. It's like, and he like gets up and he
That's
goes and he
beautiful.
like pours himself a cup of coffee and it's like and it's like
That was really intense.
it's a bit and I think old movies
just
had a
started.
tendency to do
Yeah,
that where
they
they just
did.
blare the soundtrack at you in the
Yeah.
opening.
They would do.
Especially old-time
Yeah.
black and white horror films
Yeah.
would... That was just kind of a trope of the time.
Yeah, it's like that specific one where it's like that, like
Mhm.
kind of like Jaws.
Almost like Jaws, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
100%.
it's just
You
like
got it.
Oh, yeah.
I do.
And I also do want to touch on opening. I did really like that opening of the... I did think the cinematography of that opening was really... And just kind of cinematography of the empty city throughout the movie I felt was really well done. It did a good job of just doing like these wide yet very empty shots of buildings and streets and just bodies and
and it felt like
garbage littered everywhere. And I was reading about how they filmed that because they filmed this in Rome, which is a
Yeah.
very tourist-heavy city, and they somehow made it look empty.
y'all get off the
Yeah.
camera.
Just
How
if they told everyone to leave.
Yeah, actually, I read how they did that.
How they do it?
They filmed this movie in the middle of winter, and they would only film right after dusk, before anyone was out driving and moving.
So like in the morning.
Yeah, so they filmed like as soon as the sun came up, they would be out there filming those scenes of Vincent Price driving around
I
before
cried.
anyone else would be like up and about.
Gotcha.
And Vincent Price, and because it's the middle of winter, Vincent Price would say that it was miserably cold.
Maybe that's
Like,
why he was wearing a suit.
yeah, he said like that was the coldest he'd ever been making a movie.
No way, really?
Was filming those morning shots in the dead of winter.
That stinks. That's no good.
Why wouldn't they just?
They probably didn't have the budget
Get
to
him a
empty out the
parka?
city.
Oh no, not at all. They were trying to save so much money
Yeah,
on this movie.
like especially
Oh,
Rome.
I have to talk about when when Ruth pulled the gun on him.
Oh, that was.
I was
pretty
like,
wild.
whoa!
Came
I was
out of
sitting there
nowhere.
watching. Yeah, bro. And then how he was just like, do it. You
Right.
know, his voice was
I was
so
waiting for him
funny.
to say that because if he was like
Yeah.
scared, I would have been like, bro, like
Of
seriously,
course,
like
he was like,
you've lived 3 years in this. Like seriously, there can't be any joy.
Yeah, that was so funny. She was. The other thing I have to say about Ruth, I just remembered. I was gonna bring this up earlier. When she's first seen, in her first scene, she tells Morgan, she's like, "Oh, I've been through thick and thin. I've traveled through cities and seen worse than you could ever imagine." Without a single hair out of place, her makeup is
Everyone looks
money,
great.
absolutely on point. But
What are
then
you talking about? She did not look good.
What?
I would
Her
disagree.
hair was messed up.
By the end,
Her
that's
shirt
Her
was
looked
red.
great.
Her shirt was red. And she had to
For-
change the shirt.
for
Yeah.
a
I think she was
3-year
chilling.
long.
Yeah, I mean, like she was chilling, but like,
She probably wasn't wearing the. I doubt she'd be wearing the same outfit that she was wearing at the beginning of those 3 years.
Yeah,
so.
Joe.
Well, what? No, she wasn't.
Who's doing
Of
her
course, she
laundry?
was with the.
Who-
She wasn't. But
They
what I'm
don't do
saying is,
laundry.
as the audience member, you don't know what's going on because you're under the impression that there's nobody else living.
And-
So she comes running in
Valid.
and she looks amazing, and you're like, but she's like,
I
I've
wouldn't say
been through.
amazing.
I really was like, honey, this. I'm not calling it a pandemic, but this, this.
I mean, it is.
It is, this disease-ridden world has really done you pretty well. In fact, you look
I'm-
quite
You
nice.
look great.
To
I'm
bring you
just-
out to lunch, like.
I'm just saying, if I was ever put in a situation where I was the last person alive, or like the last 2 people, I'd be like, no, let me leave. Like,
I mean-
No, where are you
I-
gonna go?
I would like gracefully jump out of a plane or something, like
Okay.
without a parachute,
Okay.
like, and like, why would I like choose
Yeah.
to like stay in the zombie apocalypse or vampire apocalypse?
Oh, I think that's one thing this movie did really well was clearly made me realize that, dang, it wouldn't really be that fun.
No, it would not be fun at all.
because Will Smith's I Am Legend looks pretty fun.
Well,
Would've been
It's
fun.
fun until the nighttime.
Right.
Then
I was just really
Yeah.
surprised that he didn't do anything to like just let it happen. Like he was so paranoid.
Well, then you got no movie.
Oh, okay, well, yeah,
Right?
yeah, yeah.
I
But like
mean-
even towards the end, like
Yeah.
when they were
Yeah.
all like cornering him.
well, he doesn't really put up too much of a fight at the end, so he probably
Mhm.
was.
He put a couple fools down.
Yeah, but like
Freak.
He was letting it fly.
yeah, but like when he's cornered at the altar, he just
Oh,
kind of lets it happen.
100%. Yeah, they execute him straight up. I was like, dang.
I know that was intense.
I like the ending overall, though.
Yeah.
Like, I liked, you
Yeah.
know, his like display of aggression. He's obviously distraught. You know, they get to
Mhm.
him. Glad he died.
Yeah.
Not that I hated him, but I just think that was the good ending.
It was a good ending.
Yeah.
I felt like we had conflicting, like, conflict of interest going on. You know,
Yeah.
personal feelings were no one was gonna agree, and there was time for someone to die.
Yeah.
And so
It might as well be
A
the
lot of
last
people
man on
died
Earth.
in this movie. It was
Well,
sad.
almost the whole world.
When the wife and the daughter died, I was like,
Oh yeah, that was.
Yeah, and I feel like
I
we
was like,
didn't
that one
spend
hit.
any time talking about
We
that
barely
sequence.
when okay,
I
when
wanted
the
to. Okay,
daughter
go ahead,
lost
go
her
ahead.
when the daughter lost her sight, that was like so sad.
Yeah, it was pretty sad.
Yeah.
I will agree with that. The child actress's performance was pretty. Even though she wasn't doing much, it was effective.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Though,
and-
I'm pretty sure that child was dubbed over.
Oh
by
my god, it was
the
so
actors.
incredibly dubbed over.
Yeah, but it still worked. I think
Yeah.
it worked better than a lot of the other voiceover moments, I thought. And but also I have to make mention of his wife, because I think it has to do with probably the portrayal and like how the writers are writing his wife. But he's like, don't let anyone in, don't let anyone in, and then after that, don't let anyone in, and then
Well, her
he's
kid's
like,
dying.
and then she comes in. Yeah, he comes in. He's like, "Where's the kid? I
How
told
is
you not to
he-
let anyone in."
Where's
She's
he-
like, "I called them."
How is he going around like and not spreading their vibe? Like that's what I was
Well,
wondering.
He was
Like-
immune.
Yeah, but he didn't know that
No, he
at
didn't.
that time. So
but
like
we
he was
did.
like avidly like being like a bad person
Yeah.
to the community.
Well,
He was also trying to. Sorry, Jack. He was also kind of. If you remember, he was the only scientist that still gave a crap.
Right.
The other dude,
didn't believe
Ben,
it,
Uncle
though.
Ben.
Uncle Ben. I forgot
Uncle
about
Ben
him,
made
like,
an
the
appearance in-
Spider-Man movie.
See, Uncle Ben made
Is
an
that
appearance in
where
this
he was?
movie.
Is that where he was from?
No. The
No.
guy's name was literally Uncle Ben, from the the flashback sequence.
Oh yeah.
When the guy came
he was
up
a
and all the
zombie.
kids were like, Uncle Ben.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then he was a zombie.
I also
Yeah.
thought of Spider-Man.
It's
and-
quite funny.
Right.
Yeah.
And something
Uncle
that-
Ben came to prove and to teach us that with great power comes
Great
Great.
responsibility.
Great zombies.
And
Great
something
zombies.
that I did find interesting is
Oh,
that
okay.
in the flashback, that character of Ben was kind of the most paranoid about the virus, and like, well,
Yes.
Vincent Price was
I
disbelieving
didn't
the
like
reports
him.
of vampires.
Yeah.
Ben was immediately like, I'm hiding in my house and putting mirrors and garlic
Yeah.
on the wall.
I
And then a few years later,
Me too, bro.
we see him. He's now the leader of the vampire creatures.
yeah,
'cause
he runs it.
this guy reminded like he was the one who was more scared of it.
That's right.
Now he's one of them, and he's kind of actively leading them.
He's okay with it now though, because he's a part of them.
That's right.
You know,
He's
You
part
know,
of the
he,
group.
he's got it. He can't disrespect. You know, like he has to understand that he's one of them now. You know.
Yeah. Yeah, you just have to accept where you're at in life sometimes.
Right.
You know, sometimes you're down bad.
I don't think they really understand what they're doing. So
No,
The
the,
dead people,
vampires.
so yeah.
Well, no,
I mean, like-
not until they get that vaccine in them.
I was really hoping the kid would show up as a zombie.
Oh, well, nah,
His
we
kid?
saw that
Yeah.
kid. We saw that kid get thrown off
Right?
the
She
cliff.
got put in the pit.
Yeah,
Oh,
we definitely.
I forgot about that.
And how sad. I mean, that was pretty unfortunate. I mean, it was as
That's
sad
the-
as it could be
I don't know
when
what
he's
he
like,
thought he was
"I
gonna
want,
do.
like, give me my daughter,"
Right,
and the guy's, like,
my daughter's in there too, man, buddy. You know?
Yeah.
Oh, that
that's
was-
amazing.
"That was well
that
done."
line was like,
yeah.
Right?
Hey,
It was,
well-
it was
That
the
a good
line
little
that
line.
scene needed to like
Yeah.
oh yeah.
keep
Yeah.
going, and to like finish up. You know, that was a strong
Yeah.
moment. I thought there were a lot of strong moments.
Yeah.
Overall, man, it's kind of crazy. You could talk about this movie for an hour. It's like I could go on, I could keep going, but it wasn't even. It was only an hour and 20 minutes.
There's one thing about the movie. There's one small thing that I noticed. That anytime they were outside,
Hmm.
there was no noise for the outside. Like-
Yeah,
No
Like you could
ambiance.
tell that they
the
were
sound design
filming
was
it.
a
Yeah,
little
yeah. The sound design was
questionable.
strange.
questionable.
was-
yeah,
It was eerie. Like
definitely.
Well, yeah,
eerie.
maybe that
Like-
was a choice.
Yeah, it was.
Maybe.
It definitely
Yeah.
helped to
Make
create
him
an
feel-
atmosphere of when he
Yeah.
was outside. That everything
Mhm.
was just dead
it
silent.
was dead silent. I was like, that is so
I
weird.
didn't even notice that.
You didn't?
No,
Yeah.
not really.
Like there was nothing.
I felt-
like you could tell they recorded in a studio.
Yeah. It was almost. There were times where I thought his voice kind of echoed as if he was inside,
Yeah.
not outside.
Yeah.
But yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah, it was interesting to see that.
I will agree.
We're just about out of time here at the Old Time Radio Show. But thank you guys for joining me. I hope
Dude.
you guys love this movie.
I
It's
loved
okay.
it so
5 out
much.
of 5.
I can't wait for the next one. Stay tuned
6 out of
for
5.
the
Yeah.
next one. We're going to do an Old Time TV show next.
That's right. Do we know what we're watching?
We don't know what we're
We don't
watching
know.
yet, but stay tuned. We will know.
Eventually.
Thank you for joining. Been Jack Ryan, Joe Taft, Abbie Kitchenham, Jack Kelleher. Thank you.
Thank you.
Come back.